Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks so much for this hearing. It's a very, very important topic. Let me just ask you, Admiral Winnefeld, I think it's been clear, and Secretary Fox, not one DOD official was consulted on this cost of living increase cut, were they?
To my knowledge, there were no DOD officials consulted. We heard about it in the end game, as other people did.
And just to be clear, the way this went down is that many of us sitting around this table actually also serve on the Budget Committee. And as a member of the Budget Committee and a member of the Armed Services Committee, we weren't consulted about this cut to the cost of living increase. As far as I know, the chairman of the Armed Services Committee was not consulted on this cost of living increase cut. And in fact, the cut actually violated the principles in our own law that we passed that said that if there are going to be any changes to retirement, that they would be grandfathered. Isn't that right? Well,
That's correct.
wonderful that we can reach a 2-year budget agreement. But you know what was astounding to me is once this became public, that people from both sides of the aisle said this is wrong. Before we even voted on it, people from both sides of the aisle had ideas on how to fix it, that we couldn't get it fixed then, before we inked this deal. That would have been the right thing to do. And now, the right thing to do is to fix it now, not to leave this hanging over our men and women's heads in terms of the unfair cuts here. And I hope that we can agree to fix this now, not to delay it. But this is a lesson. To not consult our men and women in uniform is outrageous. To not include people who serve on the Armed Services Committee, to make cuts to military retirees only in Washington. And I think that we should commit ourselves around this table to find a fix for this. We can pay for it. Many people, including myself, have ideas on how to do it, not taking further from the military budget so that we don't have a further impact on sequestration and the service to our men and women in uniform, making sure they have the equipment that they need. Let me just ask you, Admiral, Sergeant First Class, the chairman used an example of you enlist at 18, you put 20 years in, you retire at 38. Well, someone who has done that in the last 20 years, how likely is it that that individual has done multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan?
Certainly depends on the branch of service, but no question that if you're a soldier or a Marine or someone in the other services who serves on the ground, you've probably done more than one tour.
Mm-hmm. And when you do a tour in Iraq or Afghanistan, and do you have a chance to put roots down in a place so that when you do retire, that you already have roots somewhere that you can establish a career? Is that so easy?
I'd say regardless of whether you're serving in Afghanistan or Iraq or around the world in
or
other
anywhere,
ways, that one of the facets of our life in the military that we accept is that we don't have the opportunity necessarily to set some roots down. As the son of a naval officer, I don't even know what roots are.
right?
But there are a number of people who come into the service from states all around the country who might have residual roots there, but you're absolutely right. For 20 years, you're moving around.
Isn't that different from your average individual in terms of the ability to establish a career even post 20 years in the military?
Senator, it's even more than that. It affects the spouse's employment.
Right.
Many of them face severe disruptions as they move from place to place. We've gotten some help from the Congress on that, frankly, but it's still very hard for a spouse to move from one place to another and jump right into the same job.
So often for a family now, you need a 2-income household. So when your spouse is moving around all the time, he or she can't have a situation where they can establish their career also. So you're losing income there as well, aren't you?
It's income, and I think there's a frustration and anxiety level of, next time we move, am I going to be able to find a job?
So let's be clear. A military retirement is very different in terms of the sacrifices that are made than your average civilian retirement. You agree? In terms of the sacrifices made by your family, in terms of the opportunities that you lose to earn income, in terms of the opportunities you lose to put roots down because of the sacrifices you have made for our nation. Is that right?
Absolutely agree, and that's why we tend to not try to make direct comparisons between civilian and military retirement.
And in fact, when you retire from the military, you can be recalled, can't you? As far as I know, in a civilian retirement, generally you aren't mandatorily recalled back to your job, are you?
It's unusual, but in the event of a crisis, a national emergency, absolutely, you can be recalled.
In fact, we've been informed since 9/11, about 3,400 retirees were actually recalled back to active duty service. Does that sound about right?
I don't have the numbers, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they were accurate. And there are some who come in voluntarily, but others are recalled. Yes, ma'am.
So that's another huge difference, and I think a disconnect with what happened in this budget agreement. I want to ask you about an issue that was brought to our attention that involves general officer retirement pay, both you, Admiral, and Secretary Fox. As we look, I saw a report that said that in 2007, legislation provided incentives for senior officers to continue serving by extending the basic pay table from a cap of 26 years to provide increase in longevity to pay out for 40 years of service. According to one press report in USA Today, using a 2011 numbers, this could result in a 4-star officer retiring with 38 years of experience receiving $84,000 more in retirement than previously allowed. Now, I understand why these changes were made because we were in a wartime, and I assume the purpose was to encourage combat experience 1- and 2-star admirals and generals to continue serving during the war. However, now we're in a situation where the Congress has made cuts to, and I want to say these cuts, by the way, are a penalty. It's a 1% decrease in your cost of living increase. It's a penalty. And we haven't even looked at issues like, do we need to continue the increases to the generals and admirals that they've received now that we are winding down in Iraq and Afghanistan? Could you comment on that? I mean, because think about the impact on Sergeant First Class losing $80,000. That is a huge impact.
Sure. We think the commission should look at all elements of retirement, all pay grades, all of the many variables that I listed earlier. So we look forward to what the commission has to say on that and other issues.
And also looking at, well, as obviously admirals, generals, and seeing what is fair in terms of their compensation as well, because it seems to me that the people that took the biggest hit under this, the officers take a big hit on this as well, and I don't diminish that. But your average enlisted person, from what they take as a hit, basically, as I understand it, their average retirement is about $25,000 a year. And, you know, with moving around and everything like that, they have to try to find another job just to feed their family. Do you agree with that?
I do, and we are looking at all of the proposals we are considering under the budget submission that we'll make this year. Flag and General Officer pay is one of them.
Well, I appreciate that, and I just hope that we can fix this wrong and right it now and not wait. Secretary Fox, I don't think we should wait. Thank you.